No solution can be found on the battlefield. When innocent children are killed, it is heart-wrenching. That was Prime Minister Narendra Modi's message to Russian President Vladimir Putin during their talks at the Kremlin today. This comes 2 years after Prime Minister Modi had told Putin this is not an era of war, just months after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Following talks lasting several hours at the Kremlin, Prime Minister Modi told Putin in the presence of the media, and I quote, "Be it war, conflicts or terror attacks, everyone who believes in humanity is pained when there is a loss of life. But when innocent children are murdered, when we see innocent children dying, it is heart-wrenching. That pain is immense." I also held a detailed discussion with you on this issue. Stating that the two leaders had listened to each other's views on Ukraine, the Prime Minister added, "For restoration of peace, India is ready to cooperate in every way. I assure you and the international community that India is on the side of peace. For new generations to have a bright future, peace is essential. Peace talks do not succeed amid bombs, guns and bullets. Listening to my friend Putin talk about peace has filled me with hope. I would like to tell my media friends, it is possible." While Prime Minister Modi was widely expected to deliver a strong message to Putin on the Ukraine war, these remarks came a day after a children's hospital in Kiev was hit amid a wave of strikes by Russia. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky wrote an angry tweet about Prime Minister Modi's meeting with Putin, even as he shared pictures of Russia's missile attack. Zelensky wrote, and I quote, "In Ukraine today, 37 people were killed, 3 of whom were children, and 170 were injured, including 13 children, as a result of Russia's brutal missile strike. A Russian missile struck the largest children's hospital in Ukraine, targeting young cancer patients. Many were buried under the rubble. It is a huge disappointment and a devastating blow to peace efforts to see the leader of the world's largest democracy hug the world's most bloody criminal in Moscow on such a day." The reference was to images of Prime Minister Modi and President Putin greeting each other with a hug at the latter's official residence on the first day of the visit. On Monday, during a private dinner at Putin's official residence, Prime Minister Modi is believed to have told the Russian president, "India has always called for respecting the UN Charter, including territorial sovereignty and integrity. There is no solution on the battlefield. Dialogue and diplomacy is the way forward." Prime Minister Modi also raised concerns about Indian nationals deceived into joining the Russian army by unscrupulous travel agents. And as a direct outcome, Russia has committed to repatriating all the affected individuals to India at the earliest. Nearly 24 Indians are believed to have been forced into fighting the war against Ukraine after being tricked by agents into going to the country on the pretext of getting high-paying jobs. This is Prime Minister Modi's first visit to Russia since its invasion of Ukraine in 2022 and his first meeting with Putin in 2 years since the two leaders met on the sidelines of the SCO summit in Uzbekistan. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Modi was presented with Russia's highest civilian honor, the Order of St. Andrew the Apostle, the first called, at St. Catherine's Hall of the Moscow Kremlin. The honor was bestowed on him in the year 2019 for his contribution to the development of a strategic partnership between Russia and India and friendly ties between the two countries. Economic cooperation between India and Russia, especially in the areas of energy, trade, manufacturing and fertilizers, was also a key item on the agenda for talks between the two sides at the Kremlin today. Despite criticism from the West, India has become a major buyer of Russian oil, and this has benefited both countries as it has provided a much-needed export market for Moscow after several countries in Europe decided not to make oil purchases from it because of the Ukraine invasion. Expressing confidence that India-Russia ties will strengthen further, Prime Minister Modi said cooperation between the two countries in the energy sector helped the world as well. We could insulate common citizens in India from difficulties in terms of availability of fuel because of your cooperation, he told Putin. At a time when India has seen a string of terror attacks in Jammu and Kashmir, Prime Minister Modi told President Putin that the country has faced the challenge of terrorism for around 40 years. He said, "I condemn all forms of terrorism," pointing out that the world has had to face multiple challenges in the last 5 years, first due to the COVID pandemic and then because of various conflicts. The Prime Minister said, "When the world faced a shortage of food, fuel and fertilizers, we did not allow our farmers to face problems, and our ties with Russia played a role in it." Congratulating Prime Minister Modi on his third term, Vladimir Putin remarked that his re-election underscores Mr. Modi's effectiveness in advancing India's interests. Putin said, "The results speak for themselves. India now ranks third globally in terms of economy." Now, this was the 70th meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin since Mr. Modi came to power in 2014. On the first day of the visit, there was a fair amount of bonhomie and camaraderie on display when the two leaders hugged each other on Prime Minister Modi's arrival in Moscow. They were seen drinking tea on a terrace. Soon after, visuals emerged of Putin driving Mr. Modi around his official residence in a golf cart. The two leaders were then seen going for a walk unescorted as they engaged in an intense conversation. They also visited a horse stable together. This visit by Prime Minister Modi treads a fine line between maintaining a long-standing relationship with old friend Russia and courting closer ties with the West amid the war in Ukraine, which has proven to be the single most polarizing global issue in recent times. In a phone call with the Ukrainian president in October 2022, Prime Minister Modi had said there can be no military solution and that India was ready to contribute to any peace efforts. India has refrained from condemning Russia for its invasion of Ukraine and on multiple occasions reaffirmed its long-standing and time-tested friendship with the country, which is of course now anathema to the West. New Delhi and Moscow have maintained a close relationship since the Cold War, and Russia for a long time has been India's largest arms supplier. Also, Moscow remains a key supplier, as we mentioned, of discounted oil to India. But the Kremlin's isolation from the West and blooming friendship with China have impacted its partnership with New Delhi somewhat. In fact, Moscow's deepening ties with Beijing have been a cause for grave concern for many, including India. While the US and Europe accuse China of selling components and equipment that have strengthened Russia's military industry, China and India are intense rivals competing for strategic influence across South Asia, not to mention the simmering tensions between the two neighbors along the line of actual control. India is also part of the Quad grouping with the United States, Japan and Australia that positions itself against China's growing expansionism and aggression in the Asia-Pacific region.